Welcome. My name is 𝐤𝐸𝐷𝐸 𝐸. I'm here to share success stories of women from all around the globe to inspire and encourage millions of women to write their own success story. Success at first glance is often associated with money, wealth, power, status, but success is so much more. Success is also about courage, standing up for your values, for your rights, fighting for what you believe in, empowering yourself, empowering others, and sometimes also sacrificing your life in hope of a better future. This is what so many women and also men are doing right now in Iran, have been doing for the past few weeks, to fight for self-determination, for freedom, and for equality. I'm very, very happy to be introducing to you today Maliheh Keshmiri. Maliheh is from Iran. She moved here to Europe, to Estonia, a couple of years ago, together with her husband and her little daughter. In this interview, we will discuss today life in Iran. We will discuss about the Iranian Revolution and also what we, you and me, everyday people from all around the world can do to support and to show solidarity in this fight. Mal, a very warm welcome. I'm happy to see you.
Hello, Anita, and thank you for inviting me to this beautiful show that you have. And as I told you earlier, I'm really impressed and proud of how you define success. And it means so much to me. And I know that there are so many women around the world that this definition of success means so much to them. And the definition itself motivates them to go further, to go a step ahead of what they are and do something for being more glorious and shining more in the eyes of the other people who are living in the world.
Ah, thank you, Mal. This means so much to me. A couple of days ago, we've already talked, and I could, even though it's virtually, but I can feel you have such a warm, energetic, and helpful personality. I was truly impressed.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it is a mutual feeling, and I had the same for you.
Oh, thank you. It's always great to start with compliments. So let me ask you, how are you today?
Yeah, today I'm feeling much more hopeful than even yesterday. That's how it's going during the past few weeks. And I hear bad news, good news from Iran, so it affects my mood. But considering what is happening and the upward trend of the revolution in Iran, I feel much better than the previous week that we have talked together.
Good, sounds good. I can imagine it must be like a roller coaster ride, so many ups and downs, and wow. Well, what means I can imagine? Would you tell about yourself, about your life in Iran, a little bit about your background, what brought you to Estonia?
Well, as you tell, my name is Maliheh Keshmiri, and now I am a second-year student of Master of Communication Management at Tallinn University here in Estonia. Tallinn is the capital of Estonia, as you know. It's not a very big city. The country itself is not very big, but it has a very good atmosphere for studying humanities and the majors that are related to sociology. There are so many good professors and researchers here in this field. So coming from an engineering background, I studied power engineering in my bachelor's, and then worked for almost 15 years after that. And it is just about 2-3 years that we decided to relocate to another country with my husband and my little daughter, Afra. And it just happened because I had a project with a multinational dam construction company who was funded by Islamic Development Bank, which is a AAA banking organization. So it made me work based on communication more than engineering. I was the main contact person and the project coordinator who were responsible for connecting all the stakeholders, including the Ministry of Energy, the contractors, the consultants, and the Islamic Development Bank itself during the procurement process, and very little in construction phase until it ended last December. So I was nearly working for that project even a year and after I was relocating to Estonia. And I loved studying humanities, and somehow it happened because of whole things that the life put me through. As an Iranian woman, I have to say that you are born as a fighter. It is like for my generation, I am 42, and I was born in 1980, 3 months after the Iran-Iraq war started. So it is like this fight was a continuous fight for me and the ones who were born at that decade and the decades after. But the kind of the fight was slightly different for the next generations. For us, it was so much strict limitations, legislations. There were laws that put us in a cage, actually. And I was literally fighting for all I have now, all I mean for my career, for my personal life, for even writing as a poet. I had so many limitations. But okay, here I am overcoming all of this. And I consider myself as a fighter more than everything else. And I try to stand for what I say for myself and speak loud, even if it is limited and restricted. Yeah. And about your question, that what brought me to Estonia is that the human rights situation, and especially the women rights situation, made me think about the future of my daughter as a girl. I remember when I was a child, there were so much restrictions at the school, and they were brainwashing schoolgirls so that you are not actually you are a second-class citizen. It is like this, if I want to interpret it. And every advantage and privilege is for men, and you are the one your main goal should be being a good wife, being a good mother, and raise your children, nothing else. And all the rules are supporting this ridiculous idea. And during the past years, it became worse and worse. And we are witnessing that even schoolgirls and preschool girls have to do some courses that they are calling it the heaven's gift, 𝐦𝐨𝐫𝐞𝐫. That is totally brainwashing students and little girls and little boys with some rules that are not, in some cases, even in compliance with Islamic rule itself. So I was afraid of the future of my child, and we were talking so many days with my husband because, okay, in our 40s, we had a career, we had a steady life, and this relocation was too much for us. but we thought that the risk will be better to stay there and watch our child suffering from the same things that we had to suffer from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can totally understand as a mother. Yeah. And I believe from our last conversation, you told me that you are very lucky with your husband as well, because women in Iran, whatever they want to do outside of their home, they need the permission of their husband, or when you were younger, of your dad. So both your dad and your husband were very supportive and empowering you.
Yeah, actually, I was so lucky. I'm from a middle class family economically, actually, and we were not so wealthy. But the most important wealth that I had the whole my life was the men who were supporting me, my brothers, my father, and my husband afterwards. I guess it was a very good fortune of me, because at my age, not today's, so many men were thinking that even when they want to support their wives and daughters, it's better to obey the rules of the society. So the oppressions started from the family itself. Actually, it changed during the decades, but for our generation, it was different, and so many people were obeying totally what the state said. And I remember that it was some days that even laughing loudly in the streets or licking an ice cream was somehow a crime. Somehow people looked at you like you are doing something very strange, as a, for example, 7-8-year-old girl. And so I didn't have such limitations. I had my own passport since I was 18, which was not regular in the country. The rules were changing in the past decades. But when I was 18, about 22-3 years ago, it was not like this, and I was one of the most luckiest people who could have a separate passport from his dad. And then after you get married in Iran, even still this rule exists, that you have to have your husband's signature, your husband actually letter of attorney, that you can leave the country with his permission. And although you have this permission in an official way, he can even prevent you from going with a call to the authorities when you are in the airport. And it happened a couple of years ago to a woman who was the coach of an international team, international women's team. Oh, sorry, international national team, national team. I don't remember which sport was that, but her husband called the airport authorities that I don't want my wife to go to this competitions. And she was the coach of the team, and they prevented her. And it was a very awful thing. And so many women protested against it. But guess what? Nobody could do nothing for this woman. And it was very awful. And I imagine if I was her, doing so much and trying so much to be a coach at this level, and then I cannot go to a simple working travel, because just my husband doesn't let me to. So you can imagine how it can
devastating.
Yeah, and it is the same for the right of education, for the right of working, for the right of even custody of your child after divorce. And the divorce is a one-way road that only men can apply for, not women. And although there are so many good advocates and lawyers that are working on actually some notes to the rules that women can use, still there are so many women that are under very harsh situations and they cannot apply for divorce.
Whew, it's and I mean, we in Europe or in so many countries in the world, we are so privileged to be able to live so freely and have and be able to express our own opinion. It's most of us don't well forget this in everyday life.
Yeah, I understand, because now, for example, people in Iran are fighting for basic human rights, whereas there are so many people from minor religious groups, minor sexual groups, and minor political ideas that are being suppressed very harshly, and they cannot raise their voice. And it is very hard for them as well. And you can see that the whole movement and this whole revolution is about basic rights, while in other parts of the world, people are fighting for other types of rights, which is far way ahead of these types of permissions and these things that, as you said, in other parts of the world, people may not even consider that as a right, because it is somehow something natural.
It's like air. You're used to it. Yeah. This is not about politics. This is about basic human rights. The fight, something that everyone should have. You told me just before we started our interview that currently you see that punishments for those who Protestants get harsher at the moment, that it's tougher, it's getting more serious.
Yeah, actually, let me start with a very short history of the protest in Iran, so that your audience can connect themselves to what happens today in Iran. The protests against the human rights violations, and especially women's rights violations in Iran, started the day after the establishment of Islamic Republic in Iran in 1979, while against what the authorities said before the revolution took the governance of the country, that there is equality for all political groups and parties, all women and men will have the same opportunity for their activities. And except all of this, although all of this were promised by the authorities, the day after that they started forbidding very basic rules for women, and they started arresting and executing the voices who were not agree with them. And then the protest started, but because of the situation, because of the start of the Iran-Iraq war, they couldn't be actually more or less successful in the protest. And as I remember, every 10 years since 1979, there were mass protests in Iran, and they were suppressed by the government without exceptions. In 1989, they executed, hanged, and shooted above 4,000 innocent people because they were from, as they said, they were from the parties that were against the Islamic Republic, which it is not true. And now, actually last year, it was proved, and the court was conducted in a European country, if I'm not wrong, in Sweden, that they started to investigate the case of 1989. And it is a case open in United Nations as well. Then 10 years after that, in 1999, where the students of Tehran University started to protest. And at that time, I was a first-year student at Shiraz University in another city of Iran. But I heard the news and it was awful. And years after that, there were videos of that protest, and they were attacking and suppressing the students very badly, very brutally. And there were cases that they actually closed the eyes of the protesters and throw them off from a 4-story, 3-story building with their eyes closed. Students, 18, 19, 20, they were very young, and they were brutally killed by the regime. And then they attacked the dormitory, they attacked the students, they killed so many, they arrested so many. And the 10 years after that, in 2009, there was a protest, very mass protest against president elections in Iran, and people started a silent protest. 1.5 million, 15, actually 1.5 million people gathered in Azadi Square, which is the Freedom Square, actually the translation, gathered them, and some of them were sticking stickers on their lips so that they won't tell anything. The silence was like nobody spoke a word. But the government again came, and they killed so many and arrested so many. And it was the time that I heard, I know that it was earlier, but it was the time that I heard that there are very bad tortures in the prisons of Iran. And there were a boy that I always named when I'm talking about this 2009 protest. He named Ibrahim, and he blew a whistle about what happens in Iran and how they torture prisoners. He was lucky enough to be free, and after that escape to United States. And in an interview, I remember his voice very, very vividly after so many years, after 2009, that he said, "A guy was raping me with a bottle of coca." And when he, sorry, and when he went to the court to complain against what happened to him, they didn't accept, and they said that it is what it is. And unofficially, they sent him a message that if you want to follow up this case, we will arrest, torture, and kill your family as well. Mm-hmm. So it was very bad. And I guess at that time, the interval between the protests was so much because it was so many consequences. And in the eyes of the international people and authorities, we didn't have a voice. We couldn't. And every single move was suppressed very badly. And there were so many risks and consequences. But after the social media was popular, and it was like starting from that 2009 protests, people started to learn that there is less risk in their online protests. So if I want to narrow it down to women's rights protests, they started this movement called My Stealthy Freedom, that they were just taking off their headscarves in public and took a video or photo of themselves and posted it on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, mainly on Instagram because the other two were filtered by the government. And then these movements started and continued, and by this 𝐬𝐨𝐬𝐿 street girls that they were protesting against mandatory hijab, and then by other movements, other until 2019 November, that it happened that they raised the price of the gas by 3 times more, and then people started protesting against this inflations. But the state killed 1,500 people in 3 days. And it was like a massacre. What is it? It is a mass killing. It is something very crazy. And people were very angry. And then after that, just 2 months, in January, they shoot the flight PS-752, Ukrainian flight to Kiev, Tehran to Kiev, and they killed all the 176 innocent people. And first they said that it was not us, and then they admitted, and they oppressed the families of those who were in the flight, and they didn't give the black box of the flight to Ukrainian government for more investigations, and they started very much more crazy things, and it had a huge impact on people's heart, because those who were in the flight were mainly students, educated people, who were very talented people who were studying and researching in Canada. And actually the reason why they were immigrating to Canada was that they didn't have the atmosphere to do their job inside their countries. And when they started to migrate to have a better life, still they can shoot you when you are in your flight. And it was so crazy. And then after that, the interval between the movements were shorter and shorter. And now you see that we are in 2022, and this September, as you know, it happens, and this movement started. So I think I lost the clue that what question I would want to answer. Can you repeat that, please, with this background?
Well, actually, this background fits very well to your master thesis, hashtag activism in Iran. Would you connect that, the reason why it grew so much, why the entire world is involved now?
Yes. To talk about my thesis, it was like I didn't relocate to forget my country. I've never been indifferent. I've never forget that, and I cannot actually forget, because I am what I am, and I have an origin. So when I came here, and I were involved in this communication management studies, I tried to do even a little step to help how people are protesting, and to gather the lessons learned from the other protests. But I have to confess that when this protest started, I didn't even imagine that it will be very soon, this much soon after that mass protest in 2019. And I saw that very wisely people are using the lessons learned from the previous protests. When it was the protest of 2019, the bloody November, people used hashtags to bring international attention to the cause, to what's happened in Iran. But they were using so many hashtags. The narratives were not clear for other people outside Iran. And they were using the names of victims as it happened. So many people were killed, so many hashtags. It wasn't an effective movement, online movement. But when Mahsa Amini was brutally killed by the regime in September 2022, people used the lessons learned from their other online activisms during 2009 election protest, and 2019 bloody November, and they used just the hashtag of name Mahsa Amini. The first victim, the first victim, and they kept using it for other victims. They killed more than 300 based on the official figures, that we know that the figures are much more than that. They arrested thousands. They killed even more than 50 children up to now, under 18. But people kept using this hashtag Mahsa Amini, and within the first 4 weeks, the hashtag exceeded 300 million hashtags. And then after 2 weeks, 430 million hashtags. And I don't have the figure now. But to see that how it was by itself a revolution in the history of hashtags. The second top hashtag was only 8 million. So see that people kept using this, and first they attracted the attention of artists and actresses, actors around the world, and then it continued, and now we can see that even the politicians around the world are supporting the movement. And it is actually so many factors involved to get this kind of attention to this movement. But from the online activism side, it was the lessons learned from the previous protests that brought it here.
Wow. Incredible. You told me that there is this joke in Iran that people are saying there is only one country in the world, which is us, Iranians, who have 4 tenses: the future, the present, the past, and the time before 1979. And this is the time where you basically want to get back to. I know you weren't born then, just right after. But how was the time then? What do people tell?
Yeah, actually, there were drawbacks at that time as well. But what I mean by that joke that you mentioned very wisely was that we are the only country that our future is our past. It means that we were actually walking backward during these 43 years. I know that there were, because I can hear from my mom and dad and other relatives, and from the history books of other activists in Iran that were active before 1979, that there were drawbacks. But the country was going upward in cultural, social, and environmental and economical aspects. But after 1979, it was like people are going backward. The trend was reversed. And that's why people are continuing telling this joke, because they want to bring attention to this fact that we could progress more and more. We had the capacity. We are, as Iranians, Iran is a very rich country. We have so many sources of natural gas, oil, and we have even sources and resources of minerals. Actually valuable stones and metals. So we are a very rich country with a vast area, with so many active population. We have all the tools of a growing economy and to be a growing society, but we were suppressed in all aspects intentionally by the regime. And that's why they keep telling this joke. They say that we could do it, but they suppressed us. They kept us going backwards. And to briefly say that what was happening in Iran before 1979, I have to say that they started being independent from other countries in providing um, and procurement of goods and things for the country, and so many people were deploying to other countries to be educated and to come back and serve the country, and there were so many support from the government for women's activities, and there were so many successful women who were serving as ministers, top managers, and other activists, cultural activists in the country. And there were room for everyone who wanted, no matter they were men or women, they were from which economical class. There was room for everyone who wanted to progress, and the government was supporting people. That's the advantages, and I'm aware that there were drawbacks, but people keep saying that because the revolution was basically because people wanted more and they received much less.
Understand. You told me that in our last talk, I can help so much more by being here than if I was in Iran. I know you're very active now. You do protests, you give interviews. Yeah, what are the ways you support, and what are the experiences, impressions that you have or that you had so far in Estonia, or what you also see in the world?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I was observing myself during these 7 weeks. I saw myself growing from the ashes of the previous me that I was in Iran. 40 years of suppression on me personally made me a person who even was afraid of talking about very basic, ordinary things. I published my first book of poetry when I was 19, and it was the poems of me since I was 8 until I was 15. And 4 years, it took 4 years for them to review my background, to check word by word the poets that I was writing, to check everything. And when it was published, I was like another person. When you are 15, you are so much different from where you are 19 or 20.
Yes.
Like, and when the book published, I was looking at it and I saw the different person that I am. And then they were oppressing me. They were pushing me to keep telling some things that I didn't want, so that I've never published another book in Iran, although I wrote the whole time. And I'm actually I started to gather my works, and I'm trying to publish them here in Europe because there are so many Iranian publishers. I guess there are more than 5 of them in Europe, and I can start doing that. But the whole story of my life, my career, my hobbies had made me a kind of person who didn't want to talk, even though she had so much to tell. But when I came here and when the protest started, I started coming out of the shell that I was trying to protect myself inside it. And I started talking about what is happening. Although there aren't so many people here in Estonia who are who are familiar with the situation in Iran. But I started talking along with my other Iranian friends who are living in Tallinn. And then I saw the effect, and that encouraged me. And then I started more and more. And then it was like every little step was conducting me through the other. And then I found myself doing activities without officially being an activist. And I found myself raising up my voice loudly. And while I used to be so silent, I used to cry so much. When I chose my topic for thesis and I started working on that, when I was writing the introduction, the preliminary prospectus, I cried 3 nights, then I could write 2 paragraphs. So now you are looking at me. I'm talking about all these hard situations in Iran, and it just 7 weeks passed, and I can talk without crying. It made me stronger. It made the fighter inside me alive. It actually, there is a hope. There is a huge hope inside me that this time is different. And I have to stand for the ones who are being killed in the streets. And I'm proud of them. How brave are these young girls, young boys, and how brave are those from other generations that are supporting them. You know, these protests are mainly led by Generation Z, the people who were born and they didn't experience the world without the internet. And they are very young. They are very young. And I see their bravery and I see their courage. And it motivates something inside me. Every one of them could be my child. And when I see them, it motivates me. I have to support them. And every little step counts. And I see that, well, actually, I don't have so many followers on my active page on Instagram. There are actually roughly 1,020 and 200 people, 1,200. But I see that people are sending me direct messages, and they are telling me that what happened in the streets when they were protesting. I see that they are coming to me to talk about their activities, and I consider it as a step to support. And actually, there is an artist in the town that I used to live before coming to Estonia, in Bandar Abbas in south of Iran, that there is an artist, a photographer who makes videos, and because of all suppressions, he cannot publish it in his own pages. So he sends them to me, and I publish them for him. I see that I can do more instead of staying home suppressed and not knowing what to do, as I did during the protest in November 2019. And I see that I'm alive and I'm protesting and I'm doing anything that I can do to support my people.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this would have been my next question. How are people in Iran connected to the world? How do you stay connected to the people there?
Yeah, actually, it is one of the policies of the government, of the state, that whenever there is a protest on the streets, they start cutting off the internet. And for example, during the protest in November 2019, they cut off the internet for 10 consecutive days. I was there in Iran, and it was like being in a vacuum room with no access to anywhere, and you cannot even write something that I hate you for doing so. And it was like you are in your own house, but you are in jail. Uh, that was how I felt.
Mm.
Under home arrest. It was the basically something that I felt inside. And they kept repeating it during this protest. But there were a huge wave of immigrations during the past decade. And the people who are outside the borders of Iran, it is for the first time that they are united. And they are supporting with their hearts and their actions what happens in Iran. So we have our connections, our little groups. And for example, even a very basic step, we can buy some kind of applications called VPNs. And we can send the username and IDs to those who are in Iran, less than 10 people, but still. And they have their own networks inside different cities. They gather information and they actually hand it over to those who are outside the country. And the people who are outside the country start spreading them. And there are some activists, and it is not fair that I don't mention them, like Masih Alinejad, Nazanin Boniadi, who are Iranian activists living in America or other parts of the world, and they are supporting these movements by heart, and they are doing so much. They are going to very important meetings, and they are going to different countries' parliaments, to the United Nations, to other authorities, to be the Iranians' voice. And the whole things together made this protest very different from the others. Actually, you see, when I see myself as being so inactive, and now I'm doing so many things that I couldn't even imagine last year, activists are doing 100 times more. So yeah, and other things that made it different was being the other people who were immigrated from Iran. They were doing the protest all over the world. There were rally for Iran in October 1st in 150 cities around the globe. And then on October 22nd, there was a protest in Berlin, and that I don't know if you heard about it. And 80,000 of Iranian protesters were gathering in Berlin in a peaceful protest. And it was, as I read in the news, it was like even very huge for German people themselves. And they haven't seen a gathering of so much people from another country to protest against what happens in their country. So many people, 80,000 officially, and as the unofficial figures say, more than 100,000 people were gathered there. And then a week after that, on October 29th, there was a human chain in more than 100 cities around the globe, including Estonia and including your country, Germany, in solidarity with people of Iran. Who I was very surprised. I actually cried when I entered 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬, which is the Freedom Square here in Tallinn. And I saw so many Estonians and Ukrainians joining the human chain. And I was melting my heart. I was very impressed, and I was proud of being Iranian. And I saw people who are hearing us. And that's why I'm believing in every little step counts.
It's beautiful to see that the world stands together. It unites in solidarity. Last time, in connection with what you've just told me, you told me about what the solidarity and support of the people, and especially of everyday people in the world, means to those people in Iran who are fighting and risking their lives? Would you tell again?
Yes, sure. Actually, it means so much because I have the reflections from the family and friends and my followers inside Iran. Every single video, every single hashtag even, every single retweet means so much. 430 million hashtags is not a joke, and it's not done by Iranians themselves. Iran has 85 million population, and actually not all of them are active on Twitter because Twitter is filtered, and such a huge number wouldn't be reached without the help and without the solidarity from the other people, ordinary people from everywhere. And actually, from the start of this protest, above the grave of Mahsa Amini, people started to cut their hair as showing their grief, showing their deep grief for this situation. And people on the streets and on social media started to cut their hair in solidarity with the families of the victims. And then we saw women on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, ordinary women, not necessarily activists, not necessarily artists, although they were artists, but doing such things from other people. It means that actually they are seeing us as a nation. For years and years, when I was traveling outside Iran, or I was working for other companies who were outside Iran, I had to always repeat that Islamic Republic is not Iran. People of Iran are not the same as their governments. We are protesting. We are not Islamic Republic. We are against what Iran is happening inside the borders and outside the borders of Iran, in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, in everywhere. We are against them. We are protesting against this policies inside and politics outside the country. And I was kind of tired of keep telling that. But this protest, it was for the first time that people of the world heard, and people of the world supported us as being different from our government, from our state, from our regime. And of course it means so much. And of course it means so much because, you know, politics is not something that if ordinary people from somewhere in the world, especially Middle East, ask for something, other authorities from other countries start doing something. They are doing it because of the pressure from their own nations, from their own citizens. And when ordinary citizens start supporting people from Ukraine, people from Iran, people from Afghanistan, people from everywhere who are in conflict, they have to hear their voice because they are the citizens, because they vote for them, and their votes matters. So it means so much in both aspects. It means so much for people who are fighting, and because they are being heard, they are being seen, they have this courage to continue. And it also helps because the authorities and the politicians have to take action.
Thank you. So what would you say, how can we help? What can ordinary citizens do to support?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. And what I can say now, based on what is happening now and how the movement goes, there is a petition that a group of lawyers, a group of advocates in Canada, they prepared that for the G7 leaders. And I will send you the link so that you can put it in the caption of your interview. And I will really appreciate it if anyone who agrees with the content of the petition, whose main aim is to expel the Iranian authorities who are living in Europe from the countries that they are. And it wants the G7 leaders to take serious actions against what's happening in Iran. If they agree with the content and they sign the petition, which is already signed by millions. I guess the last time I checked, it was above 1 million. I don't know the figure today. But the more the signature is, the effect will be more. The more the effect will be. So I asked them to sign this petition and not to say, what's happening if I share a post? What's happening if I retweet and use a hashtag? It matters. It does matter. It does. And it works. And we have seen during this little period, this short period of 7 weeks, that first nobody, no authority, no politician, no high-level politician care about what's happening in Iran. The second week, the first couple of weeks, there was gathering in the United Nations, and the president of Iran was there, but no one asked him about what's happening in Iran. But see, just a month after that, you can see that every politician is talking. European Parliament is talking about taking actions. In Canada, 11,000 authorities were under sanctions and their assets were frozen. In Europe also, 4 organizations who were involving in suppressing people were under sanctions, and they are talking about how they can take actions and freeze the assets of authorities who are suppressing people in the Europe. And we can see that very serious actions are coming. And if this reposts, retweets, using hashtags and signing petitions continues, I'm sure that it will help so much. And you know, when you are doing so, not for people of Iran, for people of Ukraine, for people of Afghanistan, for people of everywhere in the world who are in conflict, you are not serving only the people of those countries. You are saving freedom for all. And as the wise men say, there will be no freedom in the world until every single one is free. So please do it as you are helping the whole globe to have their liberty, to have their freedom. That's what I'm asking from deep in my heart, from the people who are outside Iran, from the citizens of other countries. Please, if you care about the human rights, if you care about freedom for all, if you care about having the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of association, please take a step, no matter how little it is.
Small acts of support can have a big impact and encourage the Protestants in Iran, right, to keep going, to sacrifice their lives, because they are seen, and there is hope that this will lead to change and to a better future.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Um, what is your hope? What is your wish for the future of Iran?
First of all, I wish this bloodshed in the streets stop immediately, which I know is not a wish who is coming true very soon, but every moment counts. And my heart is with my people in Iran who are being killed in the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Next, I'm having this strong hope, and I want to convey this message to the whole world that this time is different. And by now, we gained so much things, and we have this victory of being united inside and outside the country, which would never happen before this. And we couldn't imagine of that happening very soon. So by now, the victory is with us. But what I hope for is a free Iran, a democratic, non-religious state that governs people equally and respects their rights, their basic rights, their fundamental rights, and it opens the road to the progress of a nation who deserved it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Is there, I could go on talking for hours, I think, because this is such a huge topic. Is there anything that you would like to share, a message that you still want to, leave in the interview?
Actually, I want to just say one verse of an old song, who actually it came to my mind that each small candle lights a corner of the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Please lit up that small candle. And I hope freedom for all in the globe. Women, life, freedom. Zan, zendegi, azadi.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mal. I'd like to ask you one last question, which I ask our interviewees. Which inspiring woman would you love to see being interviewed by me one day?
Wow. Marina Abramovich is one of the women who inspired me so much. She's a role model, and actually, yeah, I love her to see once in your interviews.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mal, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your hopes with us. It was, really enlightening and motivating for me and for ordinary people in the world to support, because every little voice, every little candle matters.
Thank you very much, and thank you and your audience who gave me the opportunity to talk about what's happening in Iran, to talk about my story, and hope peace and freedom for everyone. Thank you, and have a nice rest of the year.
Thank you. Dear all, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching. Each and every person has a voice. We can decide ourselves what we use it for and how loudly we speak up. You heard it, our voice matters. and it keeps encouraging the people in Iran to fight for self-determination, equality, and freedom. You decide whether and how you want to support. Take care and see you next time. Bye.